This video is sponsored by Ground News. During the rise of the Cold War, the United States began working on the ultimate infantry fighting vehicle that could be used under the effects of radiation and chemical agents to safeguard the troops. As the years passed, the specifications kept increasing, and the end product significantly changed from its original incarnation. Still, it unquestionably paid off when the M2 Bradley IFV was finally introduced to the U.S. Army. The Bradley was completely amphibious and highly capable in cross-terrain, and was able to carry a crew of 3 plus 6 heavily armed soldiers. Also, it was armed with a powerful Bushmaster cannon, a machine gun, and tow missiles to face hostile armored vehicles. It would be during Operation Desert Storm in the early 90s that the Bradley would prove its dominion, exceeding all expectations and even surpassing one of the most influential tanks in U.S. military history. Today's never-ending news cycle can be overwhelming, especially if you don't know where the stories you're reading are really coming from. That's why our sponsor for this video is Ground News, a company with a mission to burst your media bubble. Ground News is an online platform and app that allows you to compare 50,000 news sources in one place. Check out how Ground News shows us this story from a United States-led NATO military exercise. As we read through the story on the website, not only are we able to track how many news organizations are covering the story, where they come from, and their political leanings, but also the level of factuality of the data. Our favorite feature of Ground News is that we can filter and sort the coverage by locality, time, bias, factuality, and even paywalled sources. Making it even better, the team of media outsiders is led by a NASA engineer with the goal of making the news cycle more transparent. Visit ground.news/docs or click on the link in the description below to try the Ground News website for free and subscribe to gain access to all the premium features we highlighted and more. That's ground.news/docs. A new Soviet threat. Following the events at the Berlin airlift of 1948 and 1949, it became clear for the Allied forces, and especially for the United States government, that the Soviet Union and Joseph Stalin were not holding back when it came to taking over all of Europe. The Soviets were more than willing to start a new continental conflict if the US and its allies did not respond to violence with more violence. As part of the ongoing arms race between both nations, the US began to seriously consider a possible ground conflict in Western Europe. Consequently, the Army started preliminary studies to develop a vehicle that could be used in Europe and help the infantry continue fighting under the effects of nuclear, biological, or chemical agents. One of the earliest specifications for this new type of infantry fighting vehicle, or IFV, was to have a complete life support system that could protect a squad of soldiers from these radioactive and biological agents. Additionally, the vehicle had to be amphibious in nature to traverse bodies of water such as rivers, creeks, or other natural formations that other vehicles could not overcome. The first attempt at developing the new IFV was the M75, which entered service in 1952. But even though it could carry a squad of 10 men, it was not amphibious. This vehicle was followed by the M59 in 1954, which was amphibious and cheaper to produce, but lacked several of the specifications required by the Army. 4 years later, the Army issued new requirements for the IFV it wanted, calling for a vehicle that could carry a squad of at least 6 men, offer NBC protection for the crew, be amphibious and airdrop capable, have cross-country mobility, and be adaptable for multiple roles through kits or modifications to its superstructure. In addition, it had to be armed with a 20mm autocannon, a 7.62mm machine gun, and feature firing ports for the infantrymen inside the vehicle. This ongoing process resulted in the introduction of the M113 Fully Tracked Armored Personnel Carrier, or APC. However, it proved insufficient, and the Army kept working on developing an authentic IFV that was more rugged and capable of fighting the Soviets in continental Europe. A troublesome development. The M13 was the first aluminum combat vehicle to be mass-produced by the military. Its armor was thick enough to protect troops from rifle and machine gun fire, and it was air-transportable thanks to its 12-ton weight. Over 80,000 models would be produced between 1960 and the early 1990s, and the Army used a modified version of the M113 to continue developing the perfect IFV. The prototype comprised a commander's cupola and passenger firing ports and was dubbed the XM734. It then led to the XM765 armored infantry fighting vehicle, which was still inspired by the M113 design. In 1963, the US and West Germany partnered to develop the MBT-70 program, a mechanized infantry combat vehicle, or MICV, whose objective was to produce a companion vehicle for the eventual IFV. While disagreements and the addition of more specifications stalled the project, the Soviets introduced their first amphibious IFV in 1967. The Americans and the Germans were impressed by the BMP-1, but their joint venture suddenly came to an end. After that, the US Army rejected several prototypes that failed to live up to the expectations of an all-terrain infantry combat vehicle, including the future German Marder. More controversial decisions stalled the MICV program until the Army issued a new request for proposal in 1972. FMC Corporation won the bid with its XM723 prototype, a 21-ton vehicle that had a capacity for 3 crewmen, a commander, a gunner, and a driver, and 8 infantrymen. And as the Army had requested, the prototype was bulletproof against 14 5mm fire, armed with a 20mm cannon, and had firing ports for the soldiers. After several changes, tiresome reviews, antagonistic critics, and over a dozen redesigns, FMC's prototype was finally accepted in 1977. From there on, the prototype was dubbed the XM2 program. XM2. FMC had to replace the one-man turret with a two-man turret that had a Bushmaster cannon and tow missiles to use against armored vehicles. This was done to gain political leverage with the US Congress, which was getting tired of the excessive funding given to the Army's MICV program. During an interview with Army Magazine in 1987, General Don Starry would say, quote, "We, in Army Training Doctrine and Command, decided to put the toe on the MICV because we realized that if we did not put the toe on the MICV, we would probably never have a MICV." Still, the US Congress questioned several points in the development of the program and suggested that the XM2 vehicle had to be heavier and more resistant against enemy projectiles. More evaluations of the XM2 program were requested, and they were carried out by the Department of the Army and the Government Accountability Office. Also, the funding for the program was significantly reduced, and it was not until 1981 that it was finally approved for production by the Secretary of Defense after an extensive redesign. The vehicle was then baptized as the M2 Bradley, in honor of World War II hero General Omar Bradley, who passed away in 1981. The first M2 Bradley was delivered to the Army in March of 1983. Based on the Army's structure, 41 M2s would be part of an infantry battalion after replacing the M113s, which were slowly reduced to non-frontline roles. The M2 Bradley IFV. The total cost of the M2 Bradley program was $5.7 billion, with each individual unit costing approximately $3.1 million. The M2 Bradley's role is to carry infantry squads to the battlefield, provide covering fire, and suppress enemy tanks and armored vehicles with cannon and tow missiles. The vehicle is manned by a crew of 3, a commander, a driver, and a gunner, and can carry 6 fully armed infantry soldiers. In some cases, a removable seat can be incorporated to fit an additional element, while the M3 variant can carry 2 scouts for reconnaissance operations. The Bradley has a length of 21.3 feet, a width of 3.28 feet, and a height of 11 feet. It weighs over 80,000 pounds, but this can vary according to the variant, the armament used, or the additional layers of armor. The main armament comprises a 25mm M242 Bushmaster chain gun, and the single-barrel gun has an integrated dual-feed mechanism and remote feed selection. The gun is effective against light armored targets and fortified positions, and the Bradley can carry up to 900 rounds. It also has a standard fire rate of 200 rounds a minute, but can be modified to increase it to 500. A 7.62mm M240 machine gun with about 2,000 rounds is mounted coaxially right next to the Bushmaster. And for use against armored vehicles, the M2 is equipped with Raytheon's TOW BGM-71 anti-tank missile system. This twin-tube launcher is mounted on the vehicle's left side of the turret. In addition, up to 7 missiles can be carried aboard, with their range being 2.3 miles. And a double-wire command link between the gunner and the missile is distributed by 2 reels at the back of the missile, allowing the launcher to send correction data to appropriately hit its target. What's more, the infantrymen can engage the enemy with their weapons through firing ports distributed at the sides of the vehicle. And the Bradley carries M257 smoke grenade dischargers to screen its movements or distract enemy armor. The vehicle also features nuclear, biological, and chemical protection for the whole crew, and is fully amphibious and cross-country capable. Without any armor upgrades, the Bradley can be deployed with a flotation curtain that allows it to move through bodies of water at a speed of about 5 miles per hour. Also, the vehicle's armor is made up of an aluminum laminate protection scheme that can resist the impact of 30mm armor-piercing ammunition and rocket-propelled grenades, or RPGs. Moreover, the Bradley is powered by a Cummins VTA 903T 8-cylinder diesel-fueled engine that delivers over 600 horsepower and can achieve a maximum speed of 40 miles per hour with an average operational range of 300 miles. One of the main requirements from the US Army was to make the vehicle as fast as the M1 Abrams tank, so that both vehicles could keep pace during combat. And the Bradley sure delivered. Variants. Another significant advantage of the Bradley is its versatility to be deployed and carried by rail, ship, truck, and cargo aircraft, such as the C-17 Globemaster III. As a complement to its versatility, the M2 Bradley can also be fitted with several kits that can upgrade its armor and weaponry or make it more effective in a specific role. For example, the Bradley Urban Survivability Kits, or BUSK, bolster the vehicle's effectiveness in urban threat environments. The kit includes a powerful spotlight, a mesh protector that safeguards the optics, arched strips of nylon to push away fallen electrical wires' underside armor, and a bullet-resistant transparent shield for the commander outside the turret. The Bradley also has several different variants, the most recognizable of which is the M3, a cavalry variant used for an armed scout role that carries 2 scouts instead of the usual 6-man squad and additional communications equipment. Meanwhile, the M4 Bradley is a command and control vehicle, and the next offspring of the Bradley is the M6 Linebacker, a self-propelled anti-aircraft vehicle that carries 4 Stinger surface-to-air missiles instead of the standard TOW anti-tank missiles. Other variants include the M270 multiple launch rocket system carrier vehicle, which uses the Bradley's chassis, and the Black Knight prototype, an unmanned ground combat vehicle that significantly resembles the Bradley and uses several of its same components. Combat service. The Bradleys were extensively used during the Gulf War, where they destroyed more hostile Iraqi armored vehicles than the M1 Abrams heavy battle tank. 20 Bradleys were lost during the operation, but only 3 were destroyed by hostile forces. The rest were lost due to friendly fire accidents. When the Iraq War was unleashed after 9/11, the Bradleys once again proved their worth in combat in the Middle East. The vehicles became critical for deploying infantrymen into hot combat zones and extracting the wounded. However, they proved vulnerable to improvised explosive devices and projectiles from RPGs employed by the Iraqi forces. About 700 Bradleys were damaged, and over 150 were destroyed by the time the war ended. As of 2022, more than 6,800 Bradleys have been built, and Saudi Arabia is the sole operator of this infantry vehicle, besides the American military. Thank you for watching our video. Please like and subscribe to our Dark Documentaries channels to find more exciting historical content. and don't forget to hit the bell icon to be notified of our newest videos. Also, let us know what you think of the troublesome development of the M2 Bradley infantry fighting vehicle and its use during the Gulf War. Stay tuned.